My name is Paul Peterson, and I am 72 years old. I was polishing my shoes, getting ready for my weekly Tuesday dinner at my daughter's house. I was just deciding which bottle of wine to bring a good Cabernet she likes, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mr. Harrison, my lawyer for 30 years. He never texts. 4 words lit up the screen, burning themselves into my memory. Call me immediately. My heart seized. I put the wine bottle down. My hand was shaking so slightly I almost didn't notice. I dialed. Harrison didn't say hello. He said, "Paul, where are you? Are you alone?" His voice was urgent. "I've just received a formal legal request. An attorney downtown representing Amelia Hayes has petitioned for your complete medical and financial records. Paul, your daughter is preparing to have you declared legally incompetent." I stood there in my own quiet house and learned that my only child was planning to destroy me. She was filing for a conservatorship. She wanted to take everything. And in that moment, I made a choice. I was still going to that dinner. I was going to look my betrayer in the eye. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner, what truths I uncovered, and what plan my dead wife set in motion 5 years ago to stop this very day, let me know in the comments where you are listening to this story from. And please hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight for your own dignity. My ears roared with a white noise like the sound of a distant rushing waterfall. Incompetent me, I am Paul Peterson. I am a retired structural engineer. I built bridges that are still standing, marvels of steel and concrete designed to withstand forces 100 times greater than themselves. My mind, my entire life has been about precision, about logic, about structure. And just last week, my doctor, a man 20 years my junior, told me I had the heart and mind of a 50-year-old. I had just completed my annual physical. I still manage my own 6-figure stock portfolio, and I do it well. "Paul, are you there?" Harrison's voice was sharp, pulling me back from the edge. "I'm here." My voice was a rasp. "A conservatorship on what grounds?" "They're claiming significant cognitive decline." Harrison read from the document, his tone laced with disgust. "They allege you are susceptible to undue influence and are making erratic and concerning financial decisions." Erratic decisions. A cold, bitter laugh almost escaped me. My erratic decisions. Was he talking about the $200,000 I gave Amelia for the down payment on her palatial home in Medina? A neighborhood she and her husband Rick had no business living in. I told my wife Emily it was a loan, but we both knew it was a gift. Or was he talking about the $30,000 a year I've been paying for my grandson Kyle's private school? "He needs the best start, Dad," she had cooed. "This is his future. I am a widower. My wife, my wonderful Emily, has been gone for 5 years. 5 years of a silence in this house that is so loud, it sometimes feels like a physical presence. Amelia and Kyle are all I have left. I thought I was being a father, a grandfather. I thought I was building a legacy of love and support. I see now with a terrible, blinding clarity that I was just building their case. In their eyes, I wasn't a father. I was a resource. A bank vault that was getting old and needed a new set of managers. "Harrison," I interrupted, my shock congealing into something hard and cold. Anger. "I have dinner at her house tonight, my weekly Tuesday dinner." "Paul, you must cancel." "Absolutely not," he insisted. "You cannot go. Say nothing. You're ill. We need to strategize. You are walking into the lion's den." A grim smile touched my lips. "No," I said, my voice low and steady. The engineer in me was taking over, the part of my brain that sees a stress fracture and immediately calculates the load. "Tufu, I am going. I have to go. I have to act as if I know nothing. I want to look her in the eye while she lies to me. I want to see what this is." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Harrison has known me for half my life. He knew Emily. He knows I am not a man who runs. "All right, Paul," he said, his voice heavy. "All right. But you are a witness. Do not engage. Do not argue. Do not under any circumstances drink anything you don't open yourself. Do not sign anything. Not a birthday card, not a dinner napkin, nothing. You observe, you smile, and you leave. Come to my office the moment you're done. I don't care what time it is. I'll be waiting. We hung up. I looked at the expensive Cabernet I had set out, the one I knew was her favorite. I put it back in the cellar. I went to the pantry and found a cheap bottle of red blend I'd been given at a neighborhood barbecue. If I was attending a performance, I wasn't going to waste the good props on the actors. I drove my car across the 520 bridge, a structure I had consulted on decades ago. The cold, dark waters of Lake Washington churned below. The Seattle rain had started a miserable, cold drizzle that blurred the city lights into a watercolor of smears. I thought about the foundations of that bridge, the steel pylons driven deep into the bedrock to hold against the wind and the water. I had built my family on what I thought was bedrock. Love. Sacrifice. Duty. I was discovering tonight that it was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. When I pulled into the sweeping circular driveway of Amelia's home, the house was blazing with lights. It was a $3 million monument to consumption, and I had paid for the front door. My son-in-law Rick opened it before I could even ring the bell. He has the perpetually damp handshake and insincere smile of a failed car salesman. "Paul, hey, you made it. We were starting to worry you forgot." "I never forget Rick," I said, handing him the cheap wine. "It's Tuesday, family night." He glanced at the label, a flicker of disappointment so fast I might have missed it if I wasn't looking. "Great. Amelia's in the kitchen, just putting the finishing touches on." I stepped inside. The foyer was 2 stories high with a chandelier that cost more than my first car. The floors were imported Italian marble floors I had helped pay for. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary filled the air, but all I felt was a cold nausea. Amelia glided out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron that looked like it had never seen a genuine food stain. She was 45, beautiful, and the spitting image of her mother. But where Emily's eyes were filled with warmth, Amelia's were bright, hard, and assessing, like a jeweler looking for flaws. "Dad," she chirped, coming over to hug me. I braced myself. The embrace was dry-practiced. It didn't have the warmth of a daughter. It had the calculation of a co-conspirator. It felt like she was measuring me. "You're here, how are you feeling?" "I'm fine, Amelia. Just fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Smells wonderful." The dinner was an agonizing, carefully staged play. Rick dominated the conversation, rambling about some new cryptocurrency venture he was exploring. This from a man who had bankrupted 2 businesses and whose only source of income was his wife's commissions and my checkbook. I just nodded, ate my food, and watched them. I watched the way Amelia would correct him with a sharp little glance. I watched the way my grandson Kyle sat at the table, his eyes glued to his phone, completely disconnected. This was the family I was erratically funding. Then over dessert, Amelia made her move. She set down her fork, placed her manicured hand on mine, and gave me her most concerned, loving smile. "Dad," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "We've been thinking. We're worried about you, Paul." Rick chimed in, suddenly serious. "It's just, you have so much on your plate." Amelia continued, her thumb rubbing a little circle on the back of my hand. "You've worked your entire life. You've done so much for everyone. You deserve to rest. You don't need to be worrying about stocks or property taxes or managing the house." I looked right into her eyes. My daughter. My only child. "What are you suggesting, Amelia?" "I'm suggesting just that you let us help," she said. "Rick and I, we can take over the day-to-day. We can manage the finances, make sure all the bills are paid. You can just relax, enjoy your retirement. You wouldn't have to worry about a single thing." There it was. the velvet-gloved hand closing around my life, the polite, loving, reasonable-sounding prison sentence. They wanted to help manage, and the same words Harrison had warned me about. They wanted to take control. I looked at her, at my son-in-law, and I smiled. It was the coldest smile of my 72 years. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The engineer was back. The problem was defined. "You know, sweetheart," I said, patting her hand, "that's a very generous thought, a very good idea. Let me think about that." The flash of triumph in her eyes was sickening. She thought I had taken the bait. She thought I was the confused, forgetful old man she was painting me to be. "Of course, Dad. You just think about it," she said, all warmth and relief. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I excused myself shortly after. At the front door, Amelia gave me another one of her cold, dry hugs. She held on a little too long. "Drive safely, Dad," she whispered into my ear, her voice full of that fake concern. "You know, you've been so forgetful lately. We just worry." It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. It was the final nail. "Don't you worry about me, Amelia," I said, patting her on the back. "I'm clearer than I've been in years." I got into my car. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. I didn't drive home. I didn't drive back to my empty house. I drove through the rainy, dark streets of Seattle, the wipers beating a steady rhythm like a war drum. I drove straight downtown to the glowing windows of Mr. Harrison's law firm. He was on the 10th floor, and as I pulled up, I could see the light was on. He was waiting. The war had just begun. I walked into Harrison's office at 9:15 p.m. The rain was streaming down the 10th floor windows, turning the lights of downtown Seattle into a blurred, watery mess. Harrison hadn't even taken his suit jacket off. He had a stack of papers on his mahogany desk and 2 cups of black coffee that must have been sitting there for an hour, cold and bitter. He didn't bother with greetings. "How was it?" he asked, his voice low. "Exactly as you predicted," I said, shrugging off my wet coat. "She offered to help manage my finances. She told me I've been forgetful." Harrison nodded grimly, pushing one of the cold coffees toward me. I ignored it. He tapped the stack of papers. "They filed the initial petition this afternoon, just before the clerk's office closed. That's what triggered the alert. They are moving fast, Paul. Faster than I expected." He picked up the top sheet. "This is the core of their case, and it's ugly." He slid the paper across the desk. It was a preliminary declaration, a list of concerns compiled by Amelia's attorney. "This isn't just Amelia's word against yours," Harrison said. "They've already retained an expert. They have a name." He pointed to a line. "Dr. Julian Croft, a forensic psychiatrist." I'd never heard of him. And, Harrison said, leaning forward, "Dr. Croft is what we in the legal world call a hired gun. He's a professional witness. He has a very lucrative, very specific specialty. He testifies in contested conservatorship hearings. And he almost always finds that the person in question is gravely disabled or lacks capacity." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. "You're saying he's a fraud?" "I'm saying," Harrison chose his words carefully, "that Dr. Croft has a reputation for finding whatever conclusion the person paying his $20,000 retainer needs him to find. He's smooth. He's convincing. He has all the right credentials from Johns Hopkins, and he will be the weapon they use to destroy your credibility in court." Suddenly, the pieces from the dinner clicked into place. The fake concern, the pointed comments, the anecdotes. I said the word tasting like ash. "Preciso," Harrison said, tapping another page. "A house of cards built on a foundation of lies. They can't just walk into court and say, 'Paul Peterson is old.' They have to build a narrative, and Amelia is the star narrator." He began to read from the page, his voice flat, emotionless. On October 10th, my father paid the gas company's bill twice and failed to pay his electricity bill, causing a lapse in service. Is that true, Paul? No, I said, my anger rising. That's a distortion. I switched to automatic payments online. There was an overlap of one day. The lapse was a planned 30-minute service switch. I was there for it. It doesn't matter, Harrison said. Here's another one. My father frequently forgets where he has parked his car, leading to hours of confusion. He has lost his house keys 3 times this month alone. That's a lie, I snapped. I have a new car, the key fob is different. I pressed the wrong button once and the alarm went off once, and the house keys. I was installing a new deadbolt. I had 3 sets of keys on the counter. She's twisting everything. Of course she is, Harrison said. That's the point. She isn't trying to prove these things to you. She is building a file for Dr. Croft. She will feed him these half-truths, these twisted memories. She'll tell him about you forgetting the time tonight. She will paint a picture of a brilliant man in rapid tragic decline. Croft will then, for a hefty fee, write a 7-page report diagnosing you with early-onset dementia or age-related cognitive impairment. He will state under penalty of perjury that you are a danger to yourself and your own estate. By the time we get in front of a judge, it's not Amelia's word against yours. It's your word against a board-certified expert from Johns Hopkins. I sat back, the mechanism of the attack now laid bare. It was a terrifyingly simple, elegant, and evil piece of engineering. They weren't just attacking my character. They were attacking the very foundation of my identity, my mind, my competence. I looked at Harrison. The old anger, the hot red, emotional anger, was fading. It was being replaced by the cold, precise calculations of an engineer. When a structure is under attack, you don't curse the storm. You reinforce the load-bearing walls. You find the weak points in the attack. So, I said, my voice steady now, they have a hired gun, and they are feeding him ammunition. This Dr. Croft, he hasn't met me yet. No, Harrison said. That will be the next step. They will file a motion to compel you to submit to a psychiatric evaluation by him. Good, I said. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Good. Good, I repeated. Because we know his name, we know his game, and we know exactly what lies he's been told. He is expecting to meet a confused, forgetful old man. He is expecting the person Amelia described. He is not expecting me. So, I said, my voice quiet in the dim office. We know their strategy. We know they're expert. But I still don't understand the why. Harrison, this isn't just greed. This is monstrous. To do this to her own father. Why? Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, the springs groaning in protest. He steepled his fingers, looking at me over the top of them. Because, Paul, he said, you are confusing them with rational people. They are not. They are desperate, and desperate people do monstrous things. He swiveled his chair to his computer monitor and clicked his mouse a few times. I took the liberty of running a preliminary asset and debt check on Amelia and her husband Rick this afternoon, as soon as I got that petition. I've been your estate lawyer for 30 years, Paul. Your finances are tied to theirs in ways you helped set up. It wasn't hard to pull the thread. He turned the monitor so I could see it. It was a sea of red numbers and legal names. I thought you were just helping them, Harrison said. His voice flat. I didn't realize the extent of it. They're drowning, I whispered, seeing the figures. Drowning is a polite word for it, Harrison said. Harrison, they are at the bottom of the ocean. Let's start with the house in Medina. The one you put the $200,000 down payment on. They took out a second mortgage on it 8 months ago for $300,000. That money is gone. He clicked again. A list of creditors appeared. They have over $150,000 in high-interest credit card debt. American Express Visa, a few store cards from places I've never even heard of. They are servicing that debt by taking cash advances from other cards. It's a classic end-stage pyramid scheme. I felt sick. But Amelia, her commissions. She's one of the top real estate agents in Seattle. She was, Harrison corrected. The market has turned, Paul. High interest rates. Nobody is buying $3 million mansions right now. Her income has dropped by 70% in the last 6 months. But their spending, he gestured to the screen, has not. And then he pointed to the killing blow. But all of that is just the appetizer, Paul. This is the main course. He brought up a record of a wire transfer from their joint account, the one tied to the second mortgage. A single transfer. $500,000. What is that? That, Harrison said, is Rick's latest sure thing, a blockchain development startup. It was an unsecured private investment. He essentially gave $500,000 to a man he met at a golf tournament. The company declared bankruptcy 6 weeks later. The money is gone. Evaporated. $500,000. My money. Money from the house I helped them buy. So, you see, Paul, Harrison said, turning back to face me. This isn't about you being forgetful. This isn't about them worrying about you. This is about that. He tapped the screen. That $500,000 hole. The $150,000 credit card bill. The second mortgage payment that's about to come due. They are going to lose the house. They are going to lose everything. They are on the brink of catastrophic, public, humiliating bankruptcy. He let the words hang in the air. And then there's you. He continued, his voice softening just a little. You are sitting over here in your paid-off house with a clean portfolio. You are worth on paper just over $4 million. I finally understood. They're not trying to get another loan from me, I said, the cold truth settling on me. No, Harrison said. You're past that. They know you won't give them $500,000. And even if you did, it wouldn't be enough. They don't need a handout, Paul. They need the whole bank. They are aiming for your entire $4 million estate. The only way to get it, the only way to liquidate your assets to cover their catastrophic losses is to take control. And the only way to do that is to have you declared incompetent. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a hostile takeover. My daughter wasn't just trying to get my money. She was trying to plug the gaping, hemorrhaging wound of her own failure with it. And she was willing to sacrifice my mind, my freedom, and my life to do it. I sat there in Harrison's office, the silence broken only by the hum of the city and the relentless rhythm of the rain against the glass. The hot, red anger had passed. It left behind something cold, heavy, and infinitely more dangerous, my focus. I was an engineer. I understood structures, and the structure of my daughter's attack was flawed. It was built on a false premise. She assumed I was weak. She assumed I was unaware. All right, Harrison, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the desk. They want to say I'm senile. They want to build a case based on anecdotes of my confusion. Harrison nodded, his expression grim. That's the playbook, Paul. Then we'll help them, I said. Harrison's eyebrows shot up. What are you talking about? We fight them. We show the judge your medicals, your financial. No, I interrupted, not unkindly. Not yet. You're thinking like a lawyer. You're thinking about defense. I'm thinking about offense. They are building a case, but I will be their star witness. They think I'm forgetful. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to be the most forgetful man in Seattle. A slow understanding dawned on Harrison's face. Paul, that's dangerous. You'd be playing right into their... I'd be setting a trap. I said, the plan forming in my mind with perfect logical clarity. Right now they are twisting real events, a key fob, an overlapping payment, but from now on I will manufacture the events. I will be in control of the narrative. Amelia wants a confused old man. I will give her one. I will accidentally call her and ask the same question twice in 1 hour. I will forget a lunch date we never made. I will misplace my keys and call her in a panic to ask if I left them at her house. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the wet streets 10 floors below. She is overconfident. Rick is greedy and stupid. They want to believe this is working. So we will make them believe it. We will let them get comfortable. We will let them get arrogant. We will let them walk so far down this path of lies that when we finally pull the rug out, there is no way back for them. They are expecting a victim. They are not expecting a predator who is pretending to be prey. While I'm acting confused, I continued turning back to him. You and I will be meticulously documenting their actions. We are on the defense in their story. But in ours, they are the criminals, and we are the detectives. Harrison was silent for a long moment, a slow, grim smile spreading across his face. It was the smile of a shark. "Okay, Paul," he said, picking up a pen and a fresh legal pad. "Okay, let's start acting. What's your first line?" The next morning I woke up before the sunrise. The anger from the night before had cooled and settled, hardening into something cold, heavy, and clear. Purpose. I picked up my phone. It was time to start the performance. It was time to become the man my daughter so desperately wanted me to be. I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice thick with sleep and impatience. "Dad, it's 6:30. Is everything okay?" I put a slight tremor in my voice, a hint of confusion. Oh, is it? I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I was just looking for the number for the gardener, the man who fixed the hedges. You don't happen to have it, do you?" I heard a heavy, dramatic sigh on the other end of the line. "Dad, we've been over this. I gave you his number last week. I wrote it on the list for you. It's on the refrigerator. The important numbers list." "Oh, right. The list, of course." I paused just long enough. "Silly me. I must have forgotten. So, you'll be over for lunch today?" "Noon." "Dad, what are you talking about?" Her voice was sharp now, the impatience turning to irritation. "It's Wednesday. Our lunch day is Friday. Are you feeling all right?" "Oh, Friday. Yes, of course. Just tired. My mistake." I hung up the phone. I sat in the kitchen sipping my coffee, watching the clock. I gave it exactly 1 hour. At 7:30 a.m. on the dot, I called her again. This time she answered immediately. "Dad." The irritation was undisguised. "Amelia, honey, thank goodness. I'm so sorry to bother you again. I can't seem to find the gardener's number anywhere. Do you have it?" There was a long, dead silence on the line. It stretched for 5 seconds, then 10. I could hear the gears turning in her head. I could practically hear her processing this new delicious piece of evidence. This wasn't just a simple mistake. This was a pattern. When she finally spoke, all the irritation was gone. It was replaced by that sickly, sweet, condescending voice, the one she had used at dinner. "Oh, Dad," she cooed like she was talking to a child. We just talked about this. An hour ago, remember the number? It's on the list. On the fridge." "Oh," I said, injecting panic into my voice. "Oh dear. Amelia, I don't remember calling you. I don't remember that at all. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I must be more tired than I thought." "It's okay, Daddy," she said. The word daddy hit me like a physical slap. She hadn't called me that in 20 years. "It's okay. You just rest. Don't worry about a thing. Maybe I should come over later." You know, to help you organize things. Oh, would you? I said. That would be wonderful. I hung up. The bait was set. My next call was to Harrison. She's on her way, I said, skipping the pleasantries. She thinks I'm losing my mind. Now about the cameras. I was just about to call you, Harrison said. I'm sending over an installer, a private security consultant I've used for decades. He's discreet. He'll be there in an hour. No, I said. Cancel him. I'm a structural engineer, Harrison. I spent my life working with blueprints and sensitive equipment. I can install a few cameras. What I need from you is the law. Washington is a two-party consent state. I can't just record her. Paul, this is the most important part, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a serious legal tone. You are correct. Washington law requires that all parties consent to a private conversation being recorded. But the law hinges on that single word, private. The key is the reasonable expectation of privacy. If I come to your house and we go into a bedroom and whisper, we have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But, he continued, the courts have repeatedly upheld that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy when one is in the common areas of another person's home. I was already putting on my jacket. So, the living room, my office. Exactly. But we're going to be even better than that. You have an alarm system, correct, with signs posted? Yes, I said. On the front lawn and on the windows. Perfect. That's our first layer of implied consent. But here's the real legal footing. There is no expectation of privacy when you are in someone's home for the purpose of committing a crime and attempting to defraud an elderly person, conspiring to file a fraudulent conservatorship. That, Paul, is a crime. The recordings will be admissible. I'll stake my license on it. Just make sure the audio is crystal clear. That won't be a problem, I said. I didn't go to a big box store. I drove to a specialty electronics supplier in the industrial district. I didn't buy a prepackaged nanny cam. I bought components. 3 high-definition wide-angle lenses no bigger than a quarter. I bought 3 high-sensitivity audio capture devices, and I bought a secure terabyte capacity server that would upload every second of footage to an encrypted cloud that only Harrison and I had the password to. I am a precise man. I spent the next 3 hours working. I placed the first lens in the bookshelf in my study, nestled between a copy of The Art of War and my old structural engineering textbook. It had a perfect, unobstructed view of my desk and the guest chair. I placed the second in the living room, concealed in the dark wood of the fireplace mantel, aimed directly at the armchair Amelia always chose. The third I placed in the entryway, high in a shadow, giving a master view of anyone coming or going. By 2 in the afternoon, I was finished. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I saw my empty living room. I saw my empty office. I heard the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. The audio was so sensitive I could hear a car pass by on the street outside. My house was no longer a home. It was a stage, and the cameras were rolling. I played the part of the confused old man for the next 7 days. I was a model of decline. I called Amelia to ask what day it was. I forgot to turn off the stove, setting off the smoke alarm just long enough for her to get a panicked call from the security company. I let her help me pay my bills online, watching as she accidentally typed in her own email address as the recovery contact for my primary bank account. She was so patient, so condescending, and so greedy. The following Tuesday, she called. Not me. Her. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "How are you feeling today? You sound less foggy." "Oh, much better, sweetheart," I said. "Just a little tired." "Well, that's good. Listen, I have to be in your neighborhood anyway, so I thought I'd drop by. And I have those simple tax forms we talked about. The ones to let Rick and me help you manage things. Just to make the bills easier." My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The cameras were on. The server was recording. Oh, I said, injecting the perfect amount of weary resignation. That sounds fine, dear. That sounds simple. An hour later, her white BMW pulled into my driveway. She walked in carrying a designer handbag and a leather-bound folio. She kissed the air near my cheek and sat in the living room, right in the armchair, right in the kill zone of the fireplace camera. "You're looking better, Dad," she said, smiling. "Amelia," I said, playing my part. You look just like your mother." It was a test, a cruel one, but I had to see. Her smile didn't waver. It didn't even reach her eyes. "Thank you, Dad. That's sweet." She unzipped the folio and pulled out a thick stack of papers held together by a binder clip. "Now," she said, in that same sickeningly sweet voice, "this is nothing to worry about. It's just some simple tax forms. Standard stuff. It just lets me and Rick talk to your accountant handle the bills. You know, simplify things." She placed the papers on the coffee table in front of me. The camera on the mantel had a perfect, high-definition view. "There are just a few places you need to sign," she said. She fanned the papers out, but kept them neatly stacked. She pointed to the last page. A yellow "Sign Here" sticker was affixed to the bottom. "Right here, Dad," she said. And as she said it, her left thumb, with its perfectly manicured red nail, pressed down firmly on the top of the page. It wasn't a casual placement. It was a deliberate, calculated move. Her thumb landed precisely on the title of the document. I squinted. "Oh my, so many legal words. What does that say up at the top?" Her smile tightened. "It's nothing, Dad. Just legal jargon. Authorization for taxpayer. It's standard." The lens in the fireplace was capturing every second. Her thumb covering the true title. Her blatant spoken lie. I picked up the pen. My hand shook just a little. I accidentally bumped the stack of papers as I reached for it, knocking them just enough. For one perfect, clear-as-day second, her thumb slipped, and the camera saw it. The bold, all-caps letters on the top of the page. Durable power of attorney. Amelia let out a sharp, irritated sigh. "Dad, please, be careful." She quickly, forcefully realigned the stack, her thumb slamming back down on the title. "Just sign. Right here." I took the pen, and with a shaky, confused hand I signed my name. It wasn't my true signature. It was the signature of the victim she wanted me to be. She snatched the paper back before the ink was even dry, a look of profound relief and triumph on her face. She thought she had it. She thought she had won. She gathered her things. "See, all done. So simple." She stood up, a conquering hero. "I'll take care of everything now, Dad. You don't have to worry about a thing." "Oh, thank you, Amelia," I said, looking up at her. "What would I do without you?" She smiled, kissed the air again, and left. I sat in my chair for a full minute after I heard her car pull away. Then I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and rewound the footage. I zoomed in, her face, her lies, her thumb, and the title. Durable power of attorney. I saved the file. I named it Exhibit A. Harrison was right. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a crime. And I had just become the star witness for the prosecution. She thought she had the keys to the kingdom. After she left with the signed Durable Power of Attorney, a document she believed was a simple tax form, the house went quiet. But the game had just escalated. She had her proof of my cooperation. Now she needed the medical proof to back it up. The call came 4 days later. I had spent that time continuing my performance, letting my confusion ebb and flow. I was waiting for this exact call. "Hi, Dad," she said. Her voice was lighter, almost breezy, the sound of a predator that had just cornered its prey. "How are you feeling?" "Oh, Amelia," I said, letting a weary sigh carry through the phone. A bit tired, dear. These old bones. I know, Dad, and that's why I've been thinking. The practiced, concerned voice was back. You know I have a friend. A wonderful man, Dr. Croft. He's a specialist in senior health. He helps people, stay sharp and manage their energy. Dr. Croft, the hired gun. My heart beat a steady, cold rhythm. The cameras in my office were listening, recording my end of this conversation. A doctor, I said, injecting a note of suspicion. Amelia, my doctor says I'm fit as a fiddle. I don't need another doctor. Oh, no, Dad. She laughed, a light, airy sound that was completely false. He's not that kind of doctor. He doesn't poke or prod. He's a friend. He just talks. He's fascinating. He's helped so many of my friends' parents. He's going to be in your neighborhood next week on Thursday, and I thought it would be lovely if he just stopped by. For a chat. Just a simple chat. As a favor to me. There it was. The trap. She wasn't going to file a motion to compel me to see him. That would be too confrontational. That would give Harrison a chance to fight it in court. No, she was going to bring the assassin right to my front door under the guise of a friendly house call. She would get his informal evaluation, his report, and then file it with the court, blindsiding me. It was a smarter, more insidious move than I'd expected. I don't know, Amelia, I said, playing reluctant. I'm not much for chats. Please, Dad, she cooed. For me, it would make me feel so much better just to know you're talking to the best people. He's a friend. It's just a conversation. What could it hurt? What could it hurt? I let the silence stretch. I let her think she was convincing me. I let her think I was a weak old man who could be pressured. Oh, all right, dear, I said with a sigh of defeat. If it will make you happy. What time? Oh, thank you, Daddy, she gushed, the triumph thrumming in her voice. 10 a.m., Thursday at 10. I'll be there too, of course, just to make sure you're comfortable. You won't have to do a thing. We'll just talk. All right, dear, I said. Thursday at 10. You're the best, Dad. I'll see you then. She hung up. I sat in my chair for a full minute. The trap wasn't hers. The trap was mine. She had just confirmed the time, the date, and the guest list for her own execution. I picked up the phone and dialed Harrison. He answered on the first ring. Harrison? I said, my voice perfectly clear, all traces of the confused old man gone. It's on. Thursday. 10 a.m. The hired gun is coming to the house. Excellent. Harrison's voice came back just as cold. And Paul, our counter-expert. He's already confirmed, I said. He'll be here tomorrow, Wednesday, 24 hours before Croft arrives. We'll have a full, independent, and pristine evaluation in the bank before the fraud ever steps foot in my house. I agreed to Amelia's plan, and my assent was the first click of the trap. The moment I hung up, I called Harrison. The hired gun is coming. Thursday at 10, I said. Excellent, Harrison replied, his voice all business. And our defense is arriving tomorrow. On Wednesday at 9 a.m., a full 25 hours before Amelia's friend was scheduled to arrive, my doorbell rang. This was not a social call. This was Harrison's counter-move. The woman standing on my porch was the antithesis of everything I expected. She looked to be in her late 60s with sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She was not the slick, Armani-suited professional I had pictured. She was Dr. Evelyn Alastair, the chief of geriatric psychiatry at the University of Washington Hospital. She was, as Harrison had put it, the most respected and most feared expert witness in the state. She didn't testify for money. She testified when she was outraged. Mr. Peterson, she said, her voice crisp as she stepped inside. Harrison had prepaid her consultation fee. She was here as a clinician, not a friend. I understand we have a limited time frame. Shall we begin in your study? For the next 3 hours, Dr. Allister put me through the most rigorous mental examination of my life. This was no friendly chat. This was a deep clinical dive. My cameras were rolling, but for a different reason now, to have a perfect record of this evaluation to contrast with the fraudulent one coming tomorrow. I am going to conduct a full assessment, she explained, pulling out a binder. This will include a mini mental state examination, or MMSE, a clock drawing test, and a series of verbal recall and abstract reasoning questions. I will be blunt, Mr. Peterson. My report will reflect exactly what I find. Is that clear? Perfectly, doctor, I said. I am an engineer. I respect data. She began. I'm going to give you 3 words. I want you to remember them. Apple, table, penny. We will come back to them. She asked me the date, the year, the season, the building we were in, the city, the state. Simple questions. Then, can you count backward from 100 by 7s? I did. 100, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. I finished the sequence without pausing. She made a note. Now what were those 3 words I asked you to remember? Apple, table, penny. I answered immediately. She moved on. She showed me a picture of a complex geometric shape and asked me to replicate it on a blank piece of paper. I am a man who spent his life with blueprints. I drew it perfectly to scale, even noting the angles of the vertices. She looked at my drawing for a long moment. You're an engineer, I'm told. Structural, I confirmed. I designed the supports for the West Seattle Bridge expansion. And you manage your own finances? I do. My portfolio is up 9% year over year, which is 4 points above the S&P 500. I rebalanced my tech holdings in January, moving a significant portion into bonds and utilities. Dr. Allister jotted notes, her face impassive. And your hobbies? I build models. I just finished a 1/12 scale replica of my childhood home. All hardwood, ash and maple. It required over 2,000 individual pieces. She looked up from her notes. Mr. Peterson, are you currently under any unusual stress? I met her gaze. Doctor, my daughter is attempting to have me declared legally incompetent so she can steal my $4 million estate to pay for her husband's $500,000 gambling debts. Is that what you mean by unusual? A small, thin smile touched her lips. Yes, that would qualify. She pulled out a fresh sheet. This is the MMSE, she said. It's a 30-point scale. Anything above 24 is considered normal cognitive function. She administered the test. The questions were almost insultingly simple. What is this A watch? What is this A pen? Repeat after me, no ifs, ands, or buts. When she was finished, she tallied the score at the bottom of the page. She clicked her pen, then signed her name and dated it. She looked at me, and for the first time her professional demeanor softened. Mr. Peterson, in my 20 years of practice, I have rarely, if ever, seen this. She turned the paper around for me to see. Your score on the mini mental state examination is 30 out of 30. A perfect score. Your abstract reasoning is in the 99th percentile. Your verbal recall is flawless. She began packing her briefcase. I will have a full 13-page notarized report on Mr. Harrison's desk by 4 p.m. today. It will state unequivocally that you are not only competent, but possess a cognitive function significantly sharper than most men half your age. It will also note, she added, standing up, that you are under extreme duress from a clear and present familial financial threat. She handed me her card. Dr. Croft is a charlatan, she said, her voice suddenly cold. I know his work. If he dares to present a contrary finding in court, I will personally be there to see him stripped of his credentials. Have a good day, Mr. Peterson. I stood at my window and watched her get into a modest, sensible car and drive away. It was 9:58 a.m. on Wednesday. Tomorrow the hired gun was walking into a buzzsaw. I had a baseline. I had the truth notarized, dated, and signed by the most unimpeachable source in the state. The trap was no longer just set. It was armed. At 9:58 a.m. on Thursday, the doorbell rang. I watched on the monitor in my study as my daughter Amelia stood on my porch. She was smiling, but her eyes were darting around, checking the street. Beside her stood a man in an impeccably tailored, absurdly expensive-looking suit. He was tall, silver-haired, with a deep tan and a smile that was all teeth. He looked more like a game show host than a doctor. This had to be Dr. Julian Croft, the hired gun. Amelia used her own key to open the door. The camera in the entryway captured her not knocking. She just walked in. "Dad," she called out, her voice echoing in the hall. "We're here." I came out of my study, walking slowly, intentionally. I was no longer the confused old man. Today, I was the aggrieved old man. The cameras in the living room and the study were rolling, capturing everything, especially the crystal-clear audio. "Amelia," I said, my voice flat. I nodded at the man. "This must be your friend." "This is Dr. Croft," she gushed. "Doctor, this is my father, Paul." Croft stepped forward and offered his hand. It was soft manicured and his grip was weak. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. "A genuine pleasure. Thank you for welcoming me into your beautiful home." "He's just here for a chat, Dad," Amelia said, guiding him toward the living room, right toward the armchair. "Just a conversation." They sat. I sat opposite them on the sofa. The camera on the mantel had a perfect view of all three of us. Amelia perched on the edge of her seat, a picture of the concerned, dutiful daughter. Croft crossed his legs, pulled a small leather-bound notebook from his jacket, and smiled. "So, Paul," he began, his tone condescendingly warm. "Amelia tells me you're a retired engineer. That's fascinating. You must have built some incredible things." "I built things that stand up to pressure, Doctor," I said. "Wonderful." He made a small note. "Amelia also mentioned you've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately. A bit, shall we say, confused. The first loaded, leading, gaslighting question." I looked at him, and I did not smile. "Doctor," I said, my voice cold and precise, "I do not feel confused. I feel angry." Croft's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. "Angry? What are you angry about, Paul?" "I am angry about betrayal. I am angry about ingratitude." I leaned forward just an inch. "To answer your original question, I am never confused. The only time I feel a flicker of confusion is when I am forced to deal with blatant, naked treachery. Does that answer your question?" Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Amelia's face tighten. This wasn't the foggy old man she was expecting. Croft just chuckled as if I'd told a charming joke. "A fiery spirit, I like that." He made another note. "Let's try something simpler, just to get a baseline. What day is it today, Paul?" I stared at him. "It is Thursday, October 12th. The time is 10:14 a.m. You were 10 minutes late for the 10 o'clock appointment my daughter scheduled without my consent. You are currently in my home in Seattle, Washington. Would you like the zip code as well?" The smile on Croft's face twitched. He looked at Amelia. Amelia jumped in just as I knew she would. "See, Doctor?" she said, her voice full of false tears. "This is what I mean. He's so agitated, so aggressive. He was never like this. He's paranoid. He thinks everyone is late. He thinks everyone is plotting." Croft nodded sagely at her, then turned back to me. "No one is plotting, Paul," he said, his voice like a tranquilizer. "We are here to help. Your family is worried about you. Do you often feel that your family is against you?" This was the moment. The backstory drip. I let out a long, slow breath. I looked away from him toward the fireplace where a picture of my late wife, Emily, sat. My wife, Emily. I started letting my voice crack just a little. Before she died, she told me something. We were arguing about Amelia. I was giving her money for the house, for everything. And Emily told me to stop. She said, "Paul, you have to see it. Amelia loves your money more than she loves you." I turned back to Croft. His face was a mask of clinical interest. I was furious. I said the memory of that fight very real. I told her she was wrong. I told her not to ever say that about our daughter. I yelled at her. It was one of the last real conversations we ever had. And I yelled. I let the silence sit for a moment. "And now," I said, looking right into Dr. Croft's soul, "now I find myself in a chat with a stranger in my own home, a man my daughter hired, to see if I'm confused enough to be put away. So you ask me if I feel my family is against me? No. I feel that my wife was a very, very smart woman, and I should have listened to her." I watched Croft write in his little book. I knew exactly what he was writing. Delusions of persecution, fixation on family, paranoid ideation, agitation. He was getting everything he was paid for. He closed his notebook. "Paul, thank you for being so candid. I'm going to ask you to do one simple thing for me. A little brain teaser. It's something we do with all our clients. It's called a clock drawing test." He pulled a blank, unlined sheet of paper from his folio and a pen. "I'd like you to draw a clock face for me. Put in all the numbers. And then set the hands to, let's say, 10 minutes past 11. He slid the paper and pen across the coffee table. Amelia watched me, her expression tight with anticipation. This was it. The classic test for dementia. The test she was sure I would fail. I picked up the pen. I took the paper. I looked at it. "Just a clock," I said. "Any clock you like, Paul," Croft said, smiling. "All right," I said. "I am an engineer. I am a man who builds things. I didn't just draw a clock. I took the small leather-bound notebook he had left on the table. I placed it on the paper and used its perfect 90-degree corner as a straight edge. I drew a perfect XY axis in the center of the page. Then I took a small coaster from the side table. I placed its center on my axis and drew a perfect, sharp circle. "Dad, what are you?" Amelia started. "Shh," Croft said, holding up a hand, his eyes wide, fascinated. I placed the 12 at the top, the 6 at the bottom, the 3 and the 9 on the horizontal axis. Then, with the precision of a draftsman, I filled in the other numbers using the cross lines to ensure they were perfectly spaced, perfectly symmetrical. "He asked for 10 past 11, I murmured to myself. I drew the minute hand long and sharp, pointing precisely at the 2, and I drew the hour hand shorter, thicker, and not pointing at the 11, but exactly 1/6 of the way past the 11 on its way to the 12. I added the small second hand, and then I couldn't help myself. It was a final cold flourish. I started to draw inside the clock. "Mr. Peterson," Croft asked, leaning forward. I drew the mainspring. I drew the escape wheel. I drew the pallet fork. I drew a perfect schematic diagram of the clock's internal escapement mechanism. I put the pen down. I slid the paper back across the table. There was a long, long silence. Amelia was staring at the drawing, her mouth slightly open, a look of profound confusion on her face. Croft just stared at it. He had been expecting the shaky, disorganized, number-jumbled drawing of a dementia patient. He got a blueprint. He cleared his throat. He looked up, his professional smile was gone. It was replaced by a tight, thin-lipped expression of annoyance. This wasn't in the script. "Well," he said, forcing a chuckle, that is certainly the most thorough and clock I have ever seen." He quickly folded the paper and put it in his jacket. He stood up. "Thank you for your time, Paul. This has been illuminating." "Doctor, he's always been obsessive," Amelia said, scrambling to her feet, trying to salvage the narrative. "See, he gets stuck on details. It's not normal." "Yes," Croft said, grabbing his things. "I have everything I need." He was out the door in less than 30 seconds. Amelia followed him, throwing one last venomous look back at me. A look that said, "You think you're smart, old man, you just wait." The door slammed. I sat in the silence of my living room. I walked to my study, opened the laptop, and stopped the recording. I saved the 2-hour file. I named it Exhibit B. Dr. Croft, the hired gun, had just performed his evaluation. He was going to write a report. He was going to say I was agitated, paranoid, and obsessive-compulsive. But I had something he didn't. I had the truth. I had Dr. Allister's perfect 30-30 score. And now, I had a 2-hour high-definition video of the test itself. Let him write his report. Let him lie. I had the tape. And that tape would be his undoing. Croft leaned in his face, a mask of false empathy. He had been asking questions for 20 minutes, trying to find a crack. He had asked about my sleep, my diet, my moods, and now he went for the kill. "No one is plotting Paul," he said, his voice a smooth, syrupy lie. "We are here to help. Your family is worried about you. Do you often feel that your family is against you?" There it was. The question he was paid to ask. The diagnosis he was hired to find: paranoia. I let the silence hang in the air. I looked away from him toward the fireplace. There was a photo on the mantel, one of my favorites. It was me and my wife Emily on the day I retired. We were smiling. We were happy. I turned back to the doctor. The camera on the mantel was recording my face. The microphone was picking up my voice. "My wife, Emily." I started, and I let the real tremor of that memory into my voice. "She's been gone 5 years. But before she died, she told me something. We had a fight. One of our last real arguments." I paused. I was letting him and Amelia see the pain. It was real. "We were arguing about Amelia." I continued, my voice thick. I was always helping her. The down payment on her house. Her husband's projects. I was writing checks. And Emily, she begged me to stop. I looked right into Croft's eyes. She said, "Paul, you have to see it. Amelia loves your money more than she loves you." Those were her words. I let out a long, slow breath. I was furious, I admitted. I told her she was wrong. I told her she was cruel to say that about our only child. I yelled at her. It was one of the last real conversations I ever had with my wife, and I spent it yelling. I let the weight of that confession settle in the room. I could see Amelia shifting uncomfortably. "And now," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "now I'm sitting in my own living room. My daughter is trying to have me declared insane so she can take my money. So, doctor," I said, meeting his gaze, "you ask me if I feel my family is against me. No. I feel that my wife was a prophet, and I was a fool. And God help me, I wish I had listened to her." Dr. Croft practically fled. He grabbed his things, his professional smile replaced by a tight, thin-lipped expression of annoyance. This was not the confused old man he was paid to find. Amelia scrambled after him, her face a mask of fury and panic. She had staged this performance, and her star witness had just blown up the show. At the door, she turned back to me, her eyes cold and reptilian. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed, her voice low so the doctor wouldn't hear. You think you're smart, old man. You just wait. You'll see. The door slammed shut, leaving the house in a profound, heavy silence. I sat there for a long moment, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I walked to my study, opened the laptop, and stopped the recording. I watched the file save, the little blue bar creeping across the screen. 2 hours of high-definition video and crystal-clear audio. I named the file Exhibit B and uploaded it immediately to the secure cloud server I shared with Harrison. Croft was a liar. He would write a report filled with agitation and paranoia and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. But I had the tape. I had the proof of his leading questions. I had the truth. My phone rang, buzzing on the desk, startling me. It was Harrison. I had been about to call him. I have the recording, I said, skipping hello. Forget the recording for a second. Harrison's voice was sharp, all business. I was just about to call you. They did it. They officially filed. A coldness gripped me. What I thought, that's what Croft's visit was for. To get the evidence to file. That's what a normal person would do, Harrison said, his voice tight with anger. Amelia and her lawyer just filed the full petition for an emergency conservatorship with Dr. Croft's sworn signed declaration attached. The one he must have written before he even met you. They just used the visit as a rubber stamp. They filed. I repeated the word, tasting like poison. Yes. And the court has granted an emergency hearing based on Croft's fraudulent report. Paul, the hearing is next week, 7 days from now. They are moving at lightning speed. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. 7 days. But Paul, Harrison continued, his voice dropping. That's not the strange part. I've seen these emergency petitions before. They're all about protecting assets. But there's something in this filing I've never seen. It's aggressive. What is it, Harrison? They aren't just asking for the right to manage your finances. They aren't just asking to take over your medical decisions. They have specifically petitioned for the immediate emergency right to sell your house. I gripped the edge of the desk. Sell my house, but why? This house is paid for. It's my home. It's worth over $1 million. Why would they need to sell it immediately? It makes no sense. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. That's the question, Paul, Harrison said, his voice grim. That's the $1 million question we have to answer. They're not just greedy. They're not just in debt. They are desperate. And they need a lot of cash fast. We have 7 days to find out why. Sell my house. The words echoed in my study long after I hung up with Harrison. Sell my home. It made no sense. It was a tactical error, a blunder. Why petition a judge for something so extreme? It was the act of a cornered animal, a move born not of strategy, but of sheer blind panic. My house was worth on paper about $1.5 million. It was paid off. It was the only home I had known for 40 years. It was where Emily and I had raised Amelia. It was where Emily had died. The thought of them selling it, of strangers walking through her rose garden, of Rick's muddy shoes in my workshop, a new, colder anger settled in. They are desperate, Harrison had said. We have 7 days to find out why. Harrison didn't just mean we, he meant him. I was the bait, the actor. He was the hunter. He called me 2 days later. It was a Saturday. I was in my workshop trying to steady my hands by sanding a piece of maple. I found it, Paul, he said. He didn't sound triumphant. He sounded disgusted. Found what? I asked, turning off the sander. The silence of the shop was suddenly heavy. The why. The reason for the emergency petition. The reason they need to sell your house now. Go on, I said. I've been a lawyer for 35 years, Harrison said, his voice tight. I have seen greed. I have seen malice. I have seen stupidity. But Paul, This is a special combination. They are not just greedy, Paul. They are idiots. He let out a long breath. I was looking at the debt. The $500,000 hole from Rick's crypto scam. The credit cards. But that's old debt. That's a slow burn. This is a fire. I had my private investigator, the best in the city, run a check on new big-ticket purchases. Boats, planes, luxury cars. I was looking for a $100,000 Mercedes, maybe. He paused. Paul, what does Rick buy when he feels like he's a big shot? Something loud, I said. Something stupid. He bought a yacht, Harrison said. A 92-foot Italian-made 2023 Azimuth motor yacht. He signed the purchase agreement at the Seattle Boat Show 3 weeks ago. He's been bragging to the broker that he's coming into a large inheritance. I sank onto my workbench, the smell of sawdust and wood glue suddenly making me sick. A yacht. Not just a yacht. He paid a $200,000 non-refundable deposit 3 weeks ago. I'll bet my license it was the last of the money from your second mortgage. My God. That's not the why, Paul. This is the why, Harrison said, his voice dropping to a deadly serious tone. The purchase agreement states the final balance is due upon delivery, and delivery is in 10 days. The final balance, Paul, is $1.5 million. The workshop spun. The numbers clicked into place in my engineering brain with a sickening, perfect logic. 1.5 million, I whispered. Exactly, Harrison said. The exact lowball quick sale value of your home. If Rick defaults on that payment, he doesn't just lose the boat. He forfeits the $200,000 deposit. It's gone. Vanished. Another catastrophic, unexplainable loss he can't hide from Amelia. It all became clear. The emergency petition. The rush. The desperate, insane request to sell my house. They weren't trying to protect my assets. They weren't just trying to cover their debts. They're trying to liquidate my home, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned. To pay for a toy. That's it, Harrison said. They are not trying to get your money. They have already spent your money. They are just trying to cover the check. They have 10 days before the check bounces. The court hearing is in 5. I stood up. The fog of confusion was gone. The hurt of betrayal was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard, structural certainty of the fight to come. They're not just greedy, I said to Harrison. And they're not just stupid. They're cornered. And they've given us a deadline. Thank you, Harrison. I know what I have to do now. I hung up the phone. They didn't just want my money. They were trying to trade my life's work, my memories, my wife's home, for a boat. This was no longer just a legal fight. This was an extermination. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of controlled, focused rage. The hearing was in 5 days. Harrison was preparing the legal side, filing our counter-motions subpoenaing Dr. Alistair, and preparing Exhibit A and Exhibit B, the fraudulent power of attorney video, and the recording of Croft's sham evaluation. My job was to prepare the past. Paul, I need everything, Harrison had ordered. Every tax return for the past 10 years, every medical record, every major purchase receipt. I am going to build a fortress of competence around you. I need the paper to prove it. So I sat in my study surrounded by dusty file boxes. It was a miserable archaeological dig into my own life. I found receipts for the $200,000 down payment clearly marked gift in my own handwriting. I found the tuition checks for my grandson. I found decades of meticulous records, the very definition of a competent, organized mind. And then I found her. In the back of the deep closet in my study, there was one last box. It was a simple cardboard banker's box labeled in her elegant sloping script, Emily, personal. I hadn't opened this box since she died. My heart ached. It felt like a betrayal to open it now, especially for a reason as sordid as this. But Harrison said everything. I cut the old tape with a utility knife. The smell of old paper and her faint, lingering scent of lavender rose up, hitting me like a physical blow. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. Old letters we wrote in college, photographs from our honeymoon, Kyle's first-grade drawings. My hand brushed against a thick, beige envelope I didn't recognize, tucked at the very bottom. It had no label, it was just heavy. I pulled it out. It wasn't sealed. Inside there was no letter. There was no money. There was only a small, cold silver key. I dumped it into my palm. It was a safe deposit box key. But that wasn't right. I looked at the small plastic tag attached to the ring. Our safe deposit box was at our local Chase branch, the one I'd had for 30 years. The key in my hand was different. The tag was blue, not white, and the words on it made my blood run cold. Bank of America, Ballard Branch, Box 312. I stared at it. This was wrong. This was impossible. We didn't use Bank of America. I had never, not once in my entire 47-year marriage, had an account at Bank of America. Emily handled the household bills, but I handled the major finances, the investments, the estate. I knew where our money was. This was secret. Emily, my quiet, loving, supportive wife, had a secret safe deposit box. She had opened it without telling me. She had hidden the key in a box she knew I wouldn't open until after she was gone. A strange electric feeling shot through me, replacing the exhaustion. It wasn't just grief, it was curiosity. A powerful, urgent pulse. My wife was a planner. She was meticulous. She balanced our checkbook to the penny. She wasn't forgetful. She wasn't impulsive. If Emily did something in secret, she did it for a reason. The hearing was in 3 days. The yacht payment was due in 8. My world was falling apart. And suddenly my wife, 5 years gone, had just handed me a key. I looked at the small silver object in my hand. This wasn't just a key. It was a message. It was a piece of a puzzle I didn't even know existed. I closed my hand around it. The cold metal bit into my palm. I wasn't waiting for Harrison. I wasn't waiting for the hearing. I was going to that bank. I was going to Ballard. I had to know what my wife had hidden from me. The Ballard branch of Bank of America was 20 minutes away, in a part of Seattle I rarely visited. I walked in the small silver key, feeling heavy and foreign in my pocket. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt like a criminal, an imposter in my own life. I walked up to the service desk. A polite young woman looked up. "Can I help you, sir?" My voice was dry. I need to access a safe deposit box. I have the key. The box is in my wife's name, Emily Peterson." "Of course," she said. "Do you have your ID and are you listed as a co-signer on the box?" I don't know." I admitted, feeling like a fool. "She passed away 5 years ago. I just found this key. I'm her executor. I have her death certificate, my ID, our marriage certificate." The bank manager was called. I spent 30 agonizing minutes in a glass-walled office presenting documents proving who I was, proving Emily was gone. The manager was kind but firm. Finally, he looked at the signature card Emily had signed when she opened the box. "Well," he said, "you are not listed as a co-signer, Mr. Peterson. However, your wife set this up as a trust, not a joint account, and you are listed as the sole beneficiary with access granted upon presentation of her death certificate, which you have provided." My wife had set up a trust. Without me. A moment later, I was in the vault. The air was cold, sterile, and silent. The attendant used her key, then mine. A long metal box, number 312, slid out with a heavy metallic sound. She placed it on a table in a small private viewing room, and closed the door, leaving me alone. I stared at the box for a long time. My hands were shaking. This was a part of Emily I had never known. A secret she had kept from me, her husband of nearly 50 years. I lifted the lid. I was expecting, I don't know, jewelry cash stocks. Something she had hidden away. But the box was nearly empty. There was no money. There were no jewels. There were no property deeds. There was only a single thick, cream-colored envelope. My name, Paul, was written on the front in her familiar, elegant handwriting. I picked it up. It was heavy. I turned it over. The back was sealed with a wax P. I broke the seal. Inside, there was no legal document. There was just a letter written on her personal stationery, the pages thick and heavy. I unfolded the first page. The date in the top right corner made my breath catch in my throat. It was dated 6 years ago. Just 1 week. 1 week after her terminal cancer diagnosis. 1 week after the doctors told us she had at most a year. I began to read her words. My dearest Paul, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. And it means you have found this key. I am so sorry, my love. I am sorry for the secret. My hands were shaking. I sat in that sterile, silent bank vault room and unfolded the thick pages. The date. The date was 6 years ago. It was the week. The exact week. The oncologist had sat us down in his office and told us the cancer had spread, that it was terminal. A year, he'd said. I began to read her familiar, perfect handwriting swimming before my eyes. My dearest Paul, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. And it means you have found this key. I am so sorry, my love. I am so sorry for this secret. A wave of dizziness hit me. A secret. From Emily, in 47 years of marriage, we never had secrets. I lived my life by her honesty. I am writing this. I read on my voice a dry whisper in the week after the diagnosis, a week where I have felt nothing but terror. But I am an accountant's daughter, Paul, and you are an engineer. We are planners, and I have realized with a terrible cold clarity that I have to plan for 2 deaths. The death of my body from this disease, and the potential death of our family from a disease I've seen for years. Greed. I stopped. I read the line again. The greed in our own family. Please, my love, do not be angry, the letter continued. You are a man of pure, uncomplicated goodness. You see the world as it should be. You see our daughter as the little girl you taught to ride a bike. But I have always seen the world as it is, and I see Amelia as she is. My breath caught. It was the conversation. The one I had confessed to Dr. Croft. The fight. I love Amelia with every part of my being, Emily wrote, and I could feel her anguish in the words. She is my child, but she is not like you, Paul. She has a hole inside her. A hunger that is not about money, but about what money represents. Status, power, a shield against the world. And her husband, Rick. He is a fool, but he is a gasoline fool, and she is a lit match. And you, my love, you are the house we built. I put the letter down on the metal table, my hand covering my mouth. I felt sick. She had seen it. She had seen it all years before I did. I knew. I picked the letter back up. I knew that when I was gone, you would be vulnerable. Your goodness, your love for her, your grief. They would be the weapons she would use against you. She would see your generosity as weakness. She would see your inheritance not as a gift to be cherished, but as a fund to be drained. She would, in the name of helping, you dismantle everything we built together. Helping. Her word, the same one Amelia had used, leaped off the page. That fight we had, I read on my vision blurring. The one you will remember, where I told you she loved your money, and you yelled at me. My heart broke that day, Paul. Not because you yelled, but because I realized you couldn't see. You were willfully blind, and I knew in that moment I would have to do this alone. I would have to betray your trust just once in order to save you for all time. So I have done something drastic, something, I hope, permanent. I have taken steps. I have built a fortress. I have done it without your name, without your knowledge, precisely so that when this day came, and I prayed to God it never would, you could stand in a courtroom and say, I knew nothing. Then you would be in the eyes of the law truly and completely innocent. I have done this to protect you, Paul, to save you from our own child. She cannot touch you, my love. She cannot touch our home. She cannot touch our life's work. I have seen to it. I am so tired, and I am so scared, but not of dying. I am scared of what she will do when she finds out, but I am more scared of what she will do to you if I do nothing. Do not be angry with me for this secret. Be free. I did this so you could live your life in peace, in our home, without fear. This was my final act of love. Not for her, but for you. I love you more than my life. I love you more than the life I am about to lose. Now, look at the other document in this envelope. I looked. I thought the letter was all, but my trembling fingers felt another thick, folded set of papers behind it. It wasn't a letter. It was a legal document, and the title on the top of the first page, it made my heart stop completely. My fingers were numb. I felt dizzy, disoriented, as if the cold, sterile walls of the bank vault were closing in. Look at the other document, she had written. Behind the letter, just as she'd said, was another thicker multi-page document. It was folded in three. It wasn't stationery. It was thick legal bond paper. I unfolded it. My eyes skipped over the jargon, the whereas and hereinafter, and landed on the title centered at the top in bold black terrifying letters. Declaration of Trust for the Peterson Family. Irrevocable trust I didn't understand. A trust I was the executor of our estate. Our estate was simple. A joint checking account, a brokerage account. This house. Harrison and I had reviewed it just a few months ago. This thing was not part of it. I dropped my eyes back to Emily's letter, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read. My love, she had continued on the last page, that document you are holding is our salvation, and it was the hardest thing I have ever done. The week after my diagnosis, I told you I was going to visit my sister in Portland. To say goodbye. That was only half a lie. I did see my sister. But the real reason I went was to see her lawyer. You remember my niece, Sarah? Her father, my sister's husband, is not just a small-town lawyer. He is one of the top trust and estate specialists in the Pacific Northwest. I sat in his office, Paul, and I told him everything. I told him about Amelia, about Rick, about my fears. And I asked him to help me build a firewall. A legal fortress so high and so strong that not even our own daughter could burn it down. He called it an irrevocable trust. A lockbox, he called it. Over the next 6 months, my love, while I was going to chemotherapy, while I was telling you I was rebalancing our checkbook, I was systematically and legally moving everything. I dropped the letter and grabbed the legal document, my eyes flying across the pages. It was all there. Schedules, addendums, lists. The house. Emily's letter continued as if she was speaking to me from the grave. Our home. I transferred the deed. It is no longer in Paul and Emily Peterson. It is owned outright by the Peterson Family Irrevocable Trust. My heart stopped. the house Amelia was trying to sell. The brokerage account, I read on. All of it. Every stock, every bond, every mutual fund. I liquidated our joint account, and using my power as co-owner, I transferred the full cash balance into a new account, in the name of the trust. Our retirement funds, everything, it is all in the trust. I stumbled back, hitting the wall of the viewing room. $4 million. My entire net worth, my home, my life's work. For the last 6 years, it hadn't been mine. And here is the beauty of it, my love, she wrote. And I could feel the fierce protective intelligence of the woman I had married. Here is the genius of the plan. You are what they call the lifetime beneficiary. That means you get all the income, the dividends, the interest. You will live in our house rent-free for the rest of your life. Nothing will change for you. You will have your income, your home, your life. You are protected. But, and that one word was the kill shot. But you are not the trustee. You are not the grantor. You do not control the principal. You cannot be bullied or tricked or forced by a court to sell the house. You do not have the legal power to do so. You cannot be unduly influenced into giving away the stocks, because you do not own them. The trust owns them. You are legally a protected tenant in your own life. I was reading, but I wasn't breathing. But if I'm not the trustee, who? Emily's final words on the page answered me. A trust must have a trustee, my love, a manager, someone to protect the assets from attack. I knew it couldn't be me. I would be gone. I knew it couldn't be you. You were the one I was trying to protect. And it couldn't be Harrison. Amelia knew him and would fight him. I had to choose someone Amelia would never see coming, someone she would never suspect, someone she held in such low regard she wouldn't even think to look at her. I needed someone with unimpeachable character, someone who loved us, someone who was smart and meticulous and humble, someone Paul, like a nurse. I looked at the signature page of the trust document. Grantor Emily Peterson, beneficiary Paul Peterson, and there, at the bottom, successor trustee Sarah Jenkins. Sarah, my niece in Portland, my sister's daughter. The quiet, sweet girl who had become an oncology nurse. The one Amelia always called the boring cousin. The one she hadn't even invited to her wedding. My wife, in her final brilliant act, had made her the guardian of our entire $4 million estate. Amelia was filing for a conservatorship to sell a house that her cousin in Portland owned. My legs gave out. I sat down on the small, hard chair in that cold, silent room, holding the letters from my wife. I wasn't crying from grief. I was crying from awe. She had done it. From her grave. Emily had just passed me the gun fully loaded, and the hearing was in 3 days. The day of the hearing, the courtroom in the King County Superior Court was cold. It was a sterile, modern room, all light wood and gray carpet, and it felt like the most hostile place on earth. I sat at the defendant's table with Harrison. I wore my best suit, the one I had last worn to my wife's funeral. It felt appropriate. I was here to bury another part of my family. Across the aisle on the petitioner's side sat my daughter. Amelia looked magnificent. She was dressed in a severe dark blue suit, her hair pulled back. She looked like a grieving, responsible daughter forced to make a terrible, heartbreaking choice. Beside her, Rick looked like a nervous poodle fidgeting in a suit that was clearly too expensive for him. They both looked at me not with sadness, but with a cold, impatient confidence. They looked at me like I was already dead. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Maria Chen, entered. In the matter of the conservatorship of Paul Peterson, she said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. Counsel for the petitioner, you may begin. Amelia's lawyer, a slick, shark-skinned man named Barkley, stood up. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we are here today for a tragic but necessary reason. We are here to protect a man, a brilliant man, from himself. Barkley began to paint a picture of me. It was a masterpiece of fiction. He described a beloved father, a pillar of the community now, lost in the fog of cognitive decline. He spoke of erratic behavior, profound confusion, and a disturbing lack of self-care. Over the past 6 months, Barkley said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy, my client, Mr. Peterson's devoted daughter, has watched in horror as her father has deteriorated. He has forgotten to pay key utilities, leaving him without power for days. A lie. He has become dangerously forgetful, setting off his own smoke alarms after leaving the stove on. A lie. He gets lost in his own neighborhood. He loses his keys, his wallet. He calls his daughter 10-15 times a day, asking the same questions with no memory of the previous calls. I sat still, my hands clasped on the table. I looked at the judge. She was taking notes, her face a mask of neutrality. This was working. The lies were clean, simple, and believable. These are not in isolation cause for this extreme a measure, Barkley continued. But, Your Honor, we are also here because Mr. Peterson's significant estate, an estate he built over a lifetime, is now at risk. He is susceptible to undue influence. And that is why my client, his daughter, had to step in. She had no choice. We have provided in our petition a sworn declaration from one of the most respected forensic psychiatrists in the country. Your Honor, the petitioner calls Dr. Julian Croft to the stand. Croft walked in, all silver hair and expensive tailoring. He was sworn in. He sat down, looked at the judge, and smiled his warm, professional, $10,000 smile. Barkley began. Dr. Croft, did you have occasion to meet with and evaluate the respondent, Mr. Paul Peterson? I did, Croft said, his baritone voice filling the room. I met with Mr. Peterson at his home at his daughter's request. We had a long conversation. And in your expert professional opinion, what did you find? I found a man in a state of tragic and quite rapid decline, Croft said, shaking his head sadly. Mr. Peterson presents a classic, almost textbook triad of symptoms: severe agitation, clear delusional paranoia, and significant measurable cognitive impairment. I saw Harrison make a note, but I just stared at Croft. The man was a performer. Can you explain that? Barkley asked. Of course, and the agitation was immediate. He was hostile, aggressive, and clearly distressed. He's describing the confused act I put on. And the paranoia, Mr. Peterson is consumed by a delusion that his family is against him. He has a specific fixed belief that his daughter, who is clearly trying to help him, is betraying him. He's also fixated on his late wife, claiming she was a prophet who warned him. This is a common, though tragic, manifestation. He is rewriting his own past to fit his paranoid narrative. And the cognitive decline, doctor, did you test him? I did, Croft said, leaning forward. I administered a standard clock drawing test, a very common tool to assess cognitive function. And what were the results? They were profoundly disturbing, Croft said, looking at the judge with grave seriousness. Instead of drawing a simple functional clock, Mr. Peterson became stuck. He exhibited an extreme obsessive-compulsive fixation. He could not complete the simple task. He instead became lost in drawing the gears. He actually pulled out my drawing, the one I had made. He showed it to the judge. See, he drew the escapement mechanism. This is not the action of a healthy mind, Your Honor. This is perseveration, a classic symptom of frontal lobe damage. He was unable to follow a simple two-step instruction. In my professional opinion, this was it. The kill shot. In my expert opinion, based on my evaluation, my review of the family's anecdotes, and this disturbing test, Mr. Peterson is suffering from early-onset dementia complicated by severe paranoid delusions. He absolutely lacks the capacity to manage his own affairs, financial or medical. He is, to put it plainly, a danger to himself. He requires immediate supervision. Croft finished. The room was silent. He had done it. He had taken my strength, my engineering mind, my precision, and he had twisted it, reframed it, and presented it as a symptom of insanity. Barclay smiled. "Thank you, Doctor. Your witness, Mr. Harrison." Amelia was looking at me, her eyes shining with tears. They were, I realized, tears of triumph. She thought she had won. Rick was already looking at his watch as if he had a boat to catch. I looked at Harrison. He calmly stood up, walked to the podium, and squared his shoulders. "Thank you, Your Honor," Harrison said, his voice calm and steady. "And thank you, Dr. Croft, for that fascinating performance." Harrison stood up, his movements calm and deliberate. He walked to the podium, not with a stack of files, but with a single slim folder. He looked at Dr. Croft, who was still looking smug on the witness stand, and he smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Thank you, Your Honor," Harrison said, his voice quiet but carrying in the silent courtroom. "And thank you, Dr. Croft, for that fascinating performance." Barclay, Amelia's lawyer, half rose. "Objection, Your Honor, performance." Judge Chen waved him down. "It's just commentary, counsel. Get on with your cross-examination, Mr. Harrison." "Certainly, Your Honor." Harrison opened his folder. "Dr. Croft, you've testified today that you are a board-certified forensic psychiatrist." "I am," Croft said, adjusting his cuffs. "And you are no doubt paid handsomely for your expert opinion." "Objection, relevance." "Withdrawn," Harrison said easily. "Doctor, you stated that your report, which was filed with this court before this hearing, was based on your evaluation of my client, Mr. Peterson." "That is correct. My evaluation and the extensive anecdotal history provided by his daughter." "Ah, yes. The anecdotal history," Harrison said, nodding. "The stories of forgetfulness and confusion. And based on this, before you ever met my client, you had already formed an opinion, had you not?" "I had formed a hypothesis," Croft said, his smile faltering, "based on the clear pattern of behavior." "A hypothesis so strong you felt comfortable writing and signing a sworn declaration that my client was incompetent before you ever laid eyes on him. Is that correct?" My evaluation simply confirmed my findings," Croft said, shifting in his seat. "Did it, Doctor?" Harrison said. "Because I'd like to talk about that profoundly disturbing clock-drawing test." Croft's confidence returned. "Yes, a classic sign of perseveration. He was stuck, unable to complete a simple—" "Doctor," Harrison interrupted, his voice sharp as a razor. "Are you an engineer?" "No," Croft said, confused. "I am a psychiatrist." "Have you ever studied architectural drafting or structural engineering?" "Of course not." "Then you would have no way of knowing, would you, that what you are calling obsessive-compulsive perseveration is what an engineer would call precision? You wouldn't know that my client didn't just get stuck. He drew a perfect scaled and mechanically sound schematic of an analog clock's escapement mechanism. From memory." Harrison turned to the judge. "Your Honor, my client didn't fail a simple test. He aced a complex one. He did something I doubt Dr. Croft or anyone else in this room could do. He drew a blueprint." Amelia's lawyer was on his feet. "Objection, my colleague is testifying." "Sustained," Judge Chen said, but she was looking at the drawing on her desk with a new, intense curiosity. "Mr. Harrison, do you have a question for the witness?" "I do," Harrison said. "Dr. Croft, in your expert opinion, is it common for dementia patients to be able to recall from memory the precise gear and pallet fork mechanics of an analog clock?" Croft's tan looked a little green. It's... The fixation is the symptom. Just a yes or no, doctor. Is it common?" "No," Croft whispered. "Thank you, doctor. No further questions." Harrison sat down. Barclay, seeing his case was suddenly on fire, tried to jump in. "Your Honor, the petitioner rests. We believe the evidence is clear, and we ask for the emergency petition to be granted. Judge Chen looked at him. The petitioner rests after that cross-examination. Bold move, counsel. Mr. Harrison, does the respondent have a case to present? Harrison stood up again, his calm never wavering. We do, Your Honor. The respondent calls Dr. Evelyn Alastair to the stand. A stir went through the courtroom. Even Barclay's jaw dropped. Amelia, confused, looked at her lawyer. Who? A moment later, Dr. Alastair walked in, radiating an authority that made Croft look like a cheap suit. She was sworn in. Harrison began. Dr. Alastair, please state your name and profession for the court. I am Dr. Evelyn Alastair. I am the Chief of Geriatric Psychiatry at the University of Washington Hospital and Medical School. I have been in practice for 30 years. Croft, I noticed, was sinking in his chair. He knew her. Doctor, thank you for coming. Did you have occasion to evaluate my client, Mr. Paul Peterson? I did, she said, her voice crisp. At your request, I conducted a full 3-hour clinical evaluation of Mr. Peterson at his home on Wednesday, October 18th, the day before Dr. Croft's chat. And what did your evaluation consist of? It consisted of a full medical history review, a verbal recall test, abstract reasoning puzzles, and of course the standard mini mental state examination, or MMSE. And what were your findings, doctor? My findings, she said, putting on her glasses and opening a file, were unequivocal. Mr. Peterson is, well, he is one of the sharpest men his age I have ever had the privilege of examining. Amelia let out a small, strangled gasp. Dr. Croft, Harrison said, testified that my client suffers from paranoia, agitation, and cognitive decline. Did you find any evidence of this? Dr. Alastair gave a small, dry laugh. No, I found evidence of anger. Justifiable anger. I found frustration. Justifiable frustration. What Dr. Croft calls paranoia, the belief that his family is against him, I would call an accurate assessment of the situation. The man is under a hostile, fraudulent legal attack. He's not paranoid. He's correct. Objection! Barclay shrieked. She's opining on the case. Sustained, Judge Chen said, but she was leaning forward, her eyes fixed on Alastair. Just stick to your medical findings, doctor. My medical findings, Dr. Alastair continued, are that Mr. Peterson shows 0 signs of dementia, agitation, or cognitive decline. What he does show is a score on the mini mental state examination of, she paused for effect, 30 out of 30. 30, Harrison asked, as if he didn't know. What does that mean for the layman in the room? It means a perfect score, Dr. Alastair said. It means he answered every question perfectly, recall orientation calculation. It is a score I rarely see, even in patients 20 years younger. This man's mind is a fortress. She then turned with a cold fury to the report filed by Croft. I have also, she said, reviewed the declaration of Dr. Julian Croft, and as an officer of this court, and as the head of my department, I am professionally appalled. His report is, to be blunt, a work of fiction. He has taken my colleagues Mr. Peterson's precision and intelligence and deliberately, maliciously reframed it as obsession and insanity. It is not only unprofessional, it is, in my expert opinion, a clear-cut case of medical malpractice and fraud on this court. The courtroom was dead silent. Dr. Croft was grabbing his briefcase. I am submitting my own 13-page notarized report, Your Honor, Alastair said, handing it to the bailiff, which states unequivocally that Mr. Paul Peterson is not only competent, he is exceptionally competent, and he is quite clearly the victim of a predatory financial attack by his own family. Judge Chen's face was white with rage. She wasn't looking at the lawyers. She was looking at Amelia. Thank you, Doctor, Harrison said, sitting down. No further witnesses, Your Honor. Judge Chen's face was a study in controlled fury. She had just heard Dr. Alastair's testimony, and she was staring at Amelia, not her lawyer, but at my daughter. The air in the courtroom was crackling. Barkley, Amelia's lawyer, looked like he'd been punched. He was shuffling papers, clearly rattled. "Mr. Harrison," Judge Chen said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Does the respondent have anything further, or have we all heard enough?" Harrison stood up slowly. "Your Honor," he said, his voice as calm as a frozen lake. "We have one final piece of evidence. It speaks to the anecdotal history that the petitioner's counsel, Mr. Barkley, was so fond of. It speaks to the help that my client's daughter has been so eager to provide." Barkley, sensing another attack, jumped to his feet. "Objection. Your Honor, what is this? We have no... What evidence? We've already had the medical testimony." "It's not medical testimony, counsel," Harrison said. "It is, however, a very clear recording. Your Honor, we would like to present Respondent's Exhibit C, a video recording taken in Mr. Peterson's home in his living room just last week." A jolt went through the room. Amelia, who had been staring at Dr. Alistair's back with pure hatred, whipped her head around to look at me. Her face was for the first time not smug, not fake crying. It was pale with genuine animal fear. "A video," Judge Chen said, her eyebrows raising. "Mr. Harrison, on what grounds?" "On the grounds, Your Honor, that it is a perfect first-hand recording of an act of fraud, specifically fraud against the elderly. We are alleging that this entire petition," Harrison's voice boomed, "is not just baseless, but is the second step in a criminal conspiracy to defraud my client. The first step is on this video." "Objection!" Barkley was yelling now. This is outrageous. A recording. This is a two-party consent state. It's illegal. It's inadmissible." Harrison just waited for him to finish. "Your Honor," he said, turning back to the judge, "as I am sure you are aware, Washington's two-party consent law has two very clear exceptions. First, it does not apply when there is no reasonable expectation of privacy, such as when one is in the common area of another person's home. And second, and more importantly, it certainly does not apply when one is in the process of committing a felony and attempting to trick a 72-year-old man into signing a durable power of attorney under false pretenses. That, Your Honor, is a felony." Judge Chen's eyes narrowed. "I will be the judge of that, Mr. Harrison. You have this video cued." "We do, Your Honor. The bailiff has the file." "Then proceed." The large monitors in the courtroom, which had been dark, flickered to life. And suddenly, my living room was on display for the entire court. The camera angle was from the mantel. It was perfect. It showed the coffee table, the armchair Amelia had sat in, and me on the sofa. The video was silent for a moment. And then the door opened, and Amelia walked in. "That," Harrison said, his voice narrating, "is the petitioner Amelia Hayes entering my client's home last Tuesday." The courtroom watched. I watched. I saw myself playing the part of the tired, slightly weary old man. I saw my daughter in her expensive clothes sitting down, her leather folio in her lap. "Now, Your Honor," Harrison said, "please listen closely to the audio." We all heard Amelia's voice, bright and fake, echo in the silent courtroom. "Now," she said, "this is nothing to worry about, Dad. It's just some simple tax forms. Standard stuff. It just lets me and Rick talk to your accountant, handle the bills. You know, simplify things." I saw Barkley, the lawyer, flinch. That was not what she had told him. Then the camera zoomed in just as I had on my laptop. It showed the stack of papers. It showed Amelia's left hand. And it showed her perfectly manicured, red-nailed thumb pressing down hard on the top of the page. "There are just a few places you need to sign," her video self said. Then my video self, playing his part, squinted. "Oh my, so many legal words. What does that say up at the top?" The entire courtroom, the judge included, leaned forward. Amelia's voice on the video was tight, annoyed. "It's nothing, Dad. Just legal jargon. Authorization for taxpayer. It's standard." A gasp went through the courtroom. Barkley. Barkley looked like he was going to be physically sick. He was staring at his client, his mouth open, his face as white as a sheet. He had been lied to. He was in this moment realizing he was a party to fraud. And then the key moment. My video self fumbled for the pen. My hand accidentally knocked the stack of papers, and for one perfect high-definition second, her thumb slipped. Harrison paused the video. "Your Honor," he said, his voice like ice, "if you would direct your attention to the title of the document, the one my client's daughter just called a simple tax form." The words were frozen on the screen. Blurry but legible. Durable power of attorney. "Play the rest," Judge Chen said, her voice like granite. Harrison nodded. The video resumed. We watched Amelia's face flash with pure, unfiltered rage. We heard her sharp sigh. "Dad, please, be careful." We watched her slam her thumb back down on the title covering it. "Just sign. Right here." We watched me, Paul, the victim, pick up the pen and with a shaky, confused hand sign the paper. We watched Amelia snatch the document back, her face a mask of triumph. "See, all done. So simple. I'll take care of everything now, Dad. You don't have to worry about a thing." The video went black. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was so quiet, I could hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Amelia was staring at the blank screen, her face colorless. Rick was sweating visibly. And Barkley had sat down. He was just staring at his empty legal pad, a dead man walking. Judge Chen, who was no longer white with rage. She was red. A deep, dark, terrifying red was creeping up her neck. She took off her glasses. She cleaned them slowly. She put them back on. She looked at Amelia, and her voice when she spoke was not a judge's. It was the voice of a woman who had just seen pure, unadulterated evil. "Mr. Barkley," she said, her voice shaking with quiet fury, "do you have an explanation?" Barkley stood up, his knees shaking. Your Honor, I have never seen this. I was not aware." "You were not aware," Judge Chen repeated, "that your client was committing a felony in order to build the anecdotal evidence for the case you just presented to me. You were not aware that this entire petition, this entire proceeding, is based on a lie so profound it is frankly staggering." Harrison stood. "Your Honor," he said, "the respondent moves for immediate dismissal of the petition with prejudice. And Your Honor, we are not finished." Judge Chen's face was a deep, dark, terrifying red. She looked at Amelia, and her voice when she spoke was not a judge's. It was the voice of a woman who had just seen pure, unadulterated evil. "Mr. Barkley," she said, her voice shaking with quiet fury, "do you have an explanation?" Barkley stood up, his knees visibly shaking. Your Honor, I have never seen this. I was not aware. My client assured me." "Your client," Judge Chen snapped, her voice now like a whip crack in the silent room. "Your client, Mr. Barkley, is a liar, and you, sir, are either a fool or a co-conspirator. You have stood in this courtroom as an officer of this court, and you have presented a case based on this performance. You have presented fraudulent coached testimony from a charlatan. You have presented a fraudulent petition based on a felony." "Your Honor, I must object," Barkley pleaded, his voice squeaking. "Objection to what, counsel?" the judge roared, finally losing her composure. "To the truth, to the video, to the fact that you have wasted this court's time with a proceeding that is not just baseless, but is in itself an act of profound criminal malice." She stood up. The entire courtroom flinched. "The petition for the conservatorship of Paul Peterson is hereby denied. Dismissed with extreme prejudice. This matter is closed. It cannot be refiled. It cannot be revisited. It is over. She pointed a trembling finger at Amelia. That is the least of your problems. She sat down, but her eyes never left my daughter's face. Amelia looked like she had been turned to stone. Mr. Barkley, the judge continued, her voice now a deadly cold monotone. You have brought a fraudulent case before me. You have enabled your client's attempt to defraud an elderly citizen. You have vouched for a medical expert who is quite clearly a hired gun who signs declarations before he even meets a patient. I am, as of this moment, referring this entire matter, your conduct, your testimony, and your professional ethics to the Washington State Bar Association's Disciplinary Committee. You should pray you still have a license to practice law by the end of this year. Barkley actually stumbled, collapsing into his chair. He put his head in his hands. As for you, Miss Hayes, the judge said. Amelia, frozen, did not respond. Look at me, the judge commanded. Amelia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. You have come into my courtroom under the guise of a loving, concerned daughter. You have wept. You have lied. You have conspired to have your own father, a man who by all accounts is sharper than everyone in this room, declared incompetent. You did this. She picked up the document from her desk so you could file this disgusting motion to sell his home. This is not a family dispute. This is a crime. This is perjury. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. This is without a doubt elder abuse. I am referring your case, Miss Hayes, along with the testimony of Dr. Julian Croft and a copy of that video to the King County District Attorney's Office, not for consideration, with a recommendation for criminal prosecution. A small animal sound escaped Rick's throat. He finally understood. This is not a game, the judge said, her voice full of ice. You came here to steal your father's life, his home, and his dignity, and you did it by lying to this court. I have rarely in my 15 years on this bench seen such a cold, calculated, and purely evil act of greed. Get out of my courtroom. Amelia was paralyzed. Rick had to grab her by the arm and physically pull her to her feet. They stumbled white-faced toward the door, their lawyer still sitting catatonic at the table. They were failures. They were exposed. They were potentially criminals. They had lost everything. As Amelia was halfway to the door, her shoulders shaking, Harrison stood up one last time. Your Honor, he said, his voice clear and strong in the sudden silence. Thank you. But we are not finished. Amelia froze. She turned around slowly, her face a mask of confusion and terror. What? She whispered. Judge Chen looked at Harrison. I beg your pardon, Mr. Harrison. I have dismissed the case. What more could there be? Harrison looked not at the judge, but right at me, and then he turned and gave Amelia a cold, cold smile. Your Honor, Harrison said, pulling a new thick leather-bound document from his briefcase. This was just the defense. Now, it's our turn. Amelia was catatonic. She didn't move. Rick, his face a sickly shade of gray, had to physically grab her by the elbow and drag her toward the courtroom exit. He was muttering, "The D.A., Amelia." She said, "The district attorney. Oh my God." They stumbled through the heavy wooden doors into the hallway. I saw Barkley, their lawyer, just put his head in his hands, a broken man. The courtroom doors swished shut behind them, cutting off the sound, leaving them in the suddenly quiet, marble-floored hallway. They were alone, or so they thought. Amelia ripped her arm out of Rick's grasp. "Shut up," she hissed at him, her voice a raw, broken whisper. "Just shut your stupid mouth." She was leaning against the wall, breathing hard, her eyes wild with a mixture of terror and undiluted hatred. Her perfect, composed mask was shattered. This was the real Amelia, a cornered, rabid animal. What? What do we do? Rick whimpered, wiping his sweaty face with his hand. The boat. Amelia, the deposit is gone and jail. She said jail. I don't know. Amelia began, her voice cracking. He recorded me. That's correct. Harrison's voice said, clean and cold. Amelia and Rick froze. They spun around. Harrison and I hadn't stayed in the courtroom to celebrate. We had followed them out, and we were now standing between them and the elevators, blocking their only escape. Amelia stared at us. Her face, which had been pale with shock, was now mottling with a new dark rage. You, she spat at me. You did this, you bastard, you've ruined me. She actually lunged at me. Rick, in a single moment of useful action, grabbed her around the waist, pulling her back. Amelia, no, not here. That's good advice, Rick, Harrison said, adjusting his tie. He didn't even look ruffled. He was looking at his watch. It's 11:30. We have a lunch reservation. Get out of our way. Amelia shrieked, her voice echoing in the hall. Haven't you done enough? It's over. The judge said it's over. I took a step forward. Rick flinched. Amelia just glared, her chest heaving. I looked at my daughter. The person I had raised, the person I had loved. She was a stranger. A venomous, empty stranger. The judge, I said, my voice quiet, but it cut through her hysteria like a knife. The judge dismissed your case, Amelia. The one you filed to have me declared insane. That's over. That, Harrison added with a cold, precise smile, was just the defense. Amelia's wild eyes darted between us. She didn't understand. What are you talking about? What more could you do? I stepped closer, close enough that she couldn't look away. I looked at this child who had tried to steal my home, my mind, and my life, all to buy a boat. You came at me with lies, I said, my voice low and steady, and we defeated you with the truth. That's what you just lost, Amelia. Your attack. Now. I let the word hang in the silent hallway. We're not finished, I said. Not by a long shot. Now, it's our turn. Amelia's face, which had been pale with shock, was now mottling with a new dark rage. She was cornered, defeated, and exposed, and she turned all of that venom on me. You! She shrieked, her voice echoing in the marble hallway. She actually lunged at me, but Rick, in a single moment of useful action, grabbed her around the waist, pulling her back. You did this, you cruel, evil old man. You recorded me, you tricked me, you've ruined everything. I hate you. That's good advice, Rick, Harrison said, adjusting his tie. He didn't even look ruffled. He was looking at his watch. It's 11:30. We have a lunch reservation. Get out of our way, Amelia shrieked. Haven't you done enough? It's over. The judge said it's over. I took a step forward. Rick flinched. Amelia just glared, her chest heaving. The judge, I said, my voice quiet, dismissed your case, Amelia. The one you filed to have me declared insane. That's over. That, Harrison added with a cold, precise smile, was just the defense. Amelia's wild eyes darted between us. She didn't understand. What are you talking about? What more could you do? We're not finished, I said. Not by a long shot. Now, it's our turn. What are you talking about? Amelia's voice was a hoarse whisper. What more could there be? You won. You humiliated me. You've ruined me. What more do you want? We're not here to want anything, Amelia, Harrison said, his voice as sharp as a legal filing. We're here to conclude the business. What business? Rick whimpered, his eyes darting between us and the elevators. The case is dismissed. We're leaving. Not quite, a new voice said. It was a woman's voice. Calm, clear, and steady. We all turned. Walking down the hallway toward us from the direction of the elevators were two women. One was in her late 50s, wearing a sharp professional suit and carrying a heavy leather briefcase. The other was a young woman in her early 30s wearing simple blue nurse's scrubs. She had kind, intelligent eyes and a calm expression that seemed completely out of place in this scene of raw emotional conflict. Amelia squinted. Her brain, addled by rage and fear, was slow to process the new arrivals. She stared at the nurse. "Hello, Cousin Amelia," the young woman in the scrubs said. Her voice was polite. Amelia's jaw dropped. It was a look of such profound, stunned confusion, it was almost comical. "Sarah," she breathed, her voice a squeak. What the hell are you doing here?" This was Sarah, my niece, my sister's daughter from Portland, the quiet, boring cousin, the one who had become an oncology nurse, the one Amelia had always looked down on, always treated as a poor relation, the one she hadn't even invited to her wedding, because as I'd overheard her telling Rick, she's just so dull, and she'll just want to talk about bedpans. Sarah looked at her cousin, her expression not unkind, just matter of fact. "I'm here for the hearing, Amelia." "Well," she corrected herself. "I was. It seems I'm a little late. You all finished early." Amelia's confusion was now curdling back into suspicion. What you're here for? For this? Why, what does this have to do with you? Did he call you?" She spat the word, pointing at me. "Did this old bastard call you to what? To gloat?" "No," Sarah said, her voice still perfectly calm. "I called myself. Well, technically my lawyer called me." She gestured to the woman beside her. "Amelia Hayes, Rick Hayes. This is my attorney, Mrs. Jenkins from Portland. She's a specialist in trust and estate law." Your lawyer?" Rick stammered, his eyes wide. "A nurse needs a specialist lawyer." Sarah ignored him. She looked at Harrison and then at me, and then finally she looked at Amelia. "I'm not here as a nurse, Amelia," Sarah said. "And I'm not here as your cousin. I am here as the acting successor trustee of the Peterson Family Irrevocable Trust." Amelia just stared. The words were English, but they had no meaning for her. What the Peterson? What trust? What are you talking about?" Sarah turned to me and her eyes softened for the first time. "Uncle Paul, she said. Aunt Emily. She was a very, very smart woman. She set this up 6 years ago, just after her diagnosis. She appointed me as the trustee. I have been managing this property, all of it, ever since." Amelia let out a high-pitched, hysterical laugh. "Managing what, my father's property? You're insane. You're as crazy as he is. He's the owner. This is just another one of his tricks." "I'm afraid not, Miss Hayes." The other woman, Mrs. Jenkins, the lawyer from Portland, finally spoke. Her voice was like granite. She opened her heavy briefcase, took out a thick, bound document, and held it. "This," she said, "is the Declaration of Trust, the original, signed by Emily Peterson 6 years ago, and you'll find, if you ever read it, that it is a legal fortress." Mrs. Jenkins looked at my daughter with the cold, dispassionate eyes of a mortician. The house you just petitioned the court to sell has not been in your father's name for 6 years. It belongs to the trust." Amelia's face went from rage to a bloodless, waxy white. "What? The $4 million estate?" Mrs. Jenkins continued. "The brokerage accounts, the retirement funds. The entire portfolio you just tried to seize control of by having your father declared incompetent belongs to the trust. Your father," she gestured to me, "is the lifetime beneficiary. He is legally entitled to live in the house and receive all the income from the investments. But he does not own them. He has no power to sell them or to give them to you, And you, she said, her voice dropping, have no claim to them. Rick was whimpering. No, no, that can't be. That can't be legal. It is, I assure you, Mrs. Jenkins said, 100% legal and permanent. But that's not even the best part. She put on a pair of reading glasses and flipped to a page in the document, a page that had a small yellow tab on it. Your mother, Miss Hayes, was a very thorough woman. She anticipated this day. She anticipated you. She began to read. Clause 4, Section B. If any named beneficiary, and she lists you, Amelia Hayes, by name, shall in any way, shape, or form contest this trust, or, if said beneficiary shall take any legal action, such as a conservatorship proceeding, in an attempt to seize control of the assets of the lifetime beneficiary Paul Peterson. Mrs. Jenkins looked up over the top of her glasses right at Amelia. Then in that event, the gift to said beneficiary shall be void. That person shall be deemed to have predeceased the truster, and they and all of their issue shall be permanently and irrevocably disinherited from any and all portion of this trust. The hallway was dead silent. Even the air seemed to have been sucked out. Amelia was just standing, staring, not breathing. Rick the idiot was the one who broke the silence. He whispered, his voice trembling. What does that mean? I looked at my daughter, my child, the stranger who had tried to destroy me, and I felt nothing. Just the cold, final click of a lock falling into place. I stepped past Harrison. I stepped past Sarah. I stood in front of my daughter for the last time. It means, I said, my voice clear and steady, that by filing that lawsuit against me, the lawsuit you just lost, you have just legally and permanently disinherited yourself. Your mother, your brilliant, loving mother, she gave you one final test, Amelia. She gave you a choice. You could have loved me and waited, or you could have tried to take it all. I looked at her, my heart dead. And you failed. Amelia didn't scream. She didn't faint. She just deflated. All the rage, the venom, the life went out of her. Her knees just unlocked. She didn't fall. She just slid down the marble wall, crumpling into a heap on the floor. Her expensive suit ruined her face, as empty as her future. She was finally finished. I am Paul Peterson, and I am 73 years old. It's been a year. I'm sitting on my front porch in the same chair I've sat in for 20 years. It's quiet. The Seattle morning is cool and damp, and my coffee is hot. The house is silent behind me. But it's a different kind of silence now. It's not the lonely, aching silence of a widower. It is the deep, profound, and earned silence of peace. The house is no longer a target. It is once again just my home. Harrison called me last week. Not with bad news, with an update. He has a certain satisfaction in his voice these days. He informed me that Amelia's lawyer, Barkley, was suspended from the bar for 2 years. His career is over. He was found guilty of presenting a fraudulent case and failing his duty to the court. And Dr. Julian Croft, the hired gun, Dr. Allister's testimony combined with Exhibit B, the video of his sham evaluation, was sent to the state medical board. His license to practice medicine has been permanently revoked. He is, in the eyes of the law, a fraud. And Amelia and Rick. There was no money. There was no inheritance. There was no house to sell. The emergency petition was not just denied. It was the trigger that detonated their entire lives. They couldn't cover the $500,000 loss from Rick's crypto scam. They couldn't make the payments on the second mortgage. And of course, they lost the $200,000 deposit on that yacht. It was the most expensive boat they never owned. Harrison informed me they filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, a total liquidation. They lost everything. The sprawling house in Medina, the one I had helped them buy, was foreclosed on by the bank. The luxury cars were repossessed. They lost it all, because they tried to take it all. They tried to burn down my life to warm their hands, and they were in the end consumed by the fire they started. I have not heard from them. I do not know where they are. And I have found to my own surprise that I do not care. My niece Sarah came up from Portland to visit me last weekend. She came in her nurse's scrubs straight from a shift, just like she did that day in the hallway. She is the trustee, and she is magnificent. She sat at my kitchen table, the one where Amelia had planned her attack, and we went over the quarterly statements for the trust. Her and I are the board of directors for my wife's legacy. Sarah pulled out a separate checkbook. And this, she said, her smile so much like her mother's, is the best part. In the declaration of trust, my Emily, my brilliant, loving architect, had left one final, perfect instruction. After ensuring all my needs were met, all taxes paid, a full 25% of all annual profits from the $4 million portfolio are to be donated in her name to the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, right here in Seattle. My wife didn't just build a fortress to keep the darkness out. She built an engine to create good. She turned her own terrible, unfair death into a weapon against the very disease that took her. She was not just a planner. She was a visionary. I lost a daughter. I see that now. The daughter I loved was a fiction. The real one was a stranger I never knew. But in losing her, I found the full, true, and extraordinary story of my wife. And I learned something. I learned that sometimes silence is not weakness. It's not confusion. It's not despair. Sometimes silence is the time you spend reloading. This whole ordeal taught me a powerful and painful lesson. True strength isn't just about endurance or quiet sacrifice. It's about action. It shows that love and trust, when they are abused, must be met with wisdom and meticulous planning. My wife Emily demonstrated that the greatest act of love isn't always just giving. It is also protecting. She taught me that you must fight for your dignity and that it's never too late to see the truth, even if it's a truth that breaks your heart. Sometimes the hardest boundaries are the ones we must draw with the people we loved the most, not to destroy them, but to save ourselves. Have you ever had to draw a difficult line with someone you love? Share your own experiences with setting boundaries in the comments below.
내 직면을 못 잡아서 못 잡은 건가? 아니 그냥 잠깐 만난 건가? 왜 먼지랑 만났을까? 먼지 언니 낙오된 거 아니야? 먼지 언니랑 누가 팀이지? 진매 언니가 스카우트 되고 먼지 언니가 탈락을 했나? 그러면 진매 언니도 붙잡혔다는 소리잖아, 그치? 하정 언니한테. 그래서 먼지 혼자 그렇게 길을 돌아다니다가 둔이를 만나고?
그런 거지. 아니면 왜 같이 안 다녀?
아니면은 아진 언니가 엄청 뛰는 모습이 카메라에 잡혔었잖아. 아진 언니가 진매 언니 잡으러 갔다가 먼지가 낙오된 거야.
잠깐만.
왜?
여기가 화면에 보여주거든요?